Hey everybody, this is Kennedy Hawk from the MCM team, and I am here with a new video series that's going to run kind of in parallel with our hero primers, and we're going to talk all about deck building. There was a recent discussion on Discord, on the main Marvel Champions Discord and the MCM one, all about how do you go about crafting a deck, and how do you know when your deck is tweaked to the point that you should move on to a new one or kind of solidify it, do a write-up. And what are the different ways you can tweak a deck for solo versus multiplayer, or classify your decks in your brain about how you're thinking about doing this deck building? So I was really excited about that conversation. So thanks for everybody that brought it up. And I went and built about 20 decks last weekend, maybe a few too many, and tested them against maybe a few too many scenarios. And I wanted to go through my process of deck building and categorizing decks. And I think I've taken my notes and broken it into about 7 simple lessons, which isn't very convenient for being a very short video. So instead of just blabbering all of them to you for the next hour and a half, I thought I would make 7 short videos and release them over the next couple of weeks as I am sort of solidifying my notes and typing them up. So we're going to go over many of those 20 decks, but for today we are going to focus on one topic, and that topic is burger decks, which are some of my most favorite deck types recently. So what are we going to talk about in this video series? We're going to go over what is deck building in Marvel Champions. If this is your first video, I want you to understand how you go about building a deck in Marvel Champions and what that means and implies. Then we're going to go over the different types of deck constructions. And disclaimer, these aren't the only types of ways you can construct a deck. These are just like a simple way that I can think of to classify 3 different types of ways of building a deck and sort of how they can distinguish or change based on the hero or the player that's building them. Today's topic is going to be all about one of those types of burger decks, but our future topics for those other 7 videos are going to be something about salad decks, something about smoothie decks. We'll talk about how do you tweak your deck recipe. Nothing speaks to me more than food, and if you will join me in that thought, hopefully this will speak to you. So we're going to talk all about tweaking the recipe of your decks. How do you sort of, change it and alter it while you're going through the testing process, and how do I go about, taste testing my decks? We're going to talk about how do you make a deck that's one size fits all, whether it fits solo or multiplayer, and what are the differences between mainly a solo deck in that video. And then I've got some notes all about how do you build decks for multiplayer, and how do you build, if you're building maybe a pair of decks that need to synergize, what do you need to think about differently than you would when you're building just a deck that you're focusing on just yourself. And then we have some recipe hacks, tips, and tricks, some things I always consider when doing deck building or when helping someone tweak their deck when they reach out to me on Discord. So we will get on with this video and talk about what is deck building in Marvel Champions. So if you've played Marvel Champions before, you already know this. When you play a game of Marvel Champions, you pick a hero. For me, example, I would pick Hawkeye because he is the best. And that hero is going to come with an associated 15-ish cards. I say ish because some have more, some have less. But about 15 that usually go into your deck. So here Hawkeye has 10 arrows, Mockingbird, 2 copies of Expert Marksman, a quiver, and a bow. Pretty simple. And then you say, okay, well, now I need to build a full deck, and a deck is 40 to 50 cards, so I have to choose an aspect. And I start putting some aspect cards in. Maybe I put some skilled strikes, some combat training, Godslayer. I really want to focus in on attack with this deck. And then I say, okay, well, I obviously need some staples in my deck. From basics, I'm going to put in some energy, genius, and strength cards. And then I'm going to put in some other like event cards that really synergize between basic and whatever aspect strategy I've taken. And then I'm going to put in some, general all-purpose healing, survival cards, since I kind of have a low hit point pool and not a lot of defense in my deck. And then all of a sudden, I can't even see what my deck started as. It's just a big pile of cards. I can maybe make out 1 or 2 Hawkeye cards in it, but it's hard to see the vision of where I was going. And I have this trap happen to me all the time when I'm building decks where I just keep piling and piling and piling cards in, and then all of a sudden I type it up in Marvel CDB and I'm like, oh, this is a 55 card deck. That's probably not the best. So it's really hard to say, how do I take like a distinct strategy to building my deck? What is the focus of my deck going to be? How am I going to pare it down to something that's tractable? And that's what we're going to talk about in this video series. So we're going to talk about 3 simple ways that you can build a deck, 3 different types of decks. And I would challenge you to think of your favorite deck and try to figure out what category it fits into. Is this a burger deck, right? When I go to get a burger, I don't care. I mean, I do care a little bit what kind of bread is on it, but I'm talking like I want a bacon cheeseburger, right? The bacon cheeseburger is the meat of my deck. So in a burger deck, the aspect cards are like the meat of your sandwich. You want some aspect combination or some cool facet of the aspect, whether it be defending or reflecting or leading allies, to be like the main focus of your deck. And your hero cards, they're kind of just the carrier vehicle, right? That could be a burger deck, that could be a taco deck, it could be whatever your favorite food is. But you've got some, kind of bland thing that just helps you get to the good stuff, right? And that good stuff is the aspect cards in this case. That's one train of thought. Another train of thought is to have a salad deck. So when I have a salad, right, I have, a Cobb salad, and there's the salad piece, and it's got, some other aspecty stuff to kind of congeal it together, maybe give it a little bit of flavor, but a bulk of what I'm putting onto my plate is the leafy greens. So in these decks, these heroes, they're going to be the leafy greens. I know green cards are gross, but in this case, those hero green cards can be okay. So we're going to make a really nice foundation using our hero, and then figure out what kind of, flavors do we want to bring out in our hero using our aspects to highlight specific hero cards. And then you can have kind of like a smoothie deck. I'm a smoothie guy. I have smoothies for breakfast all the time. Protein shakes, whatever you want to call them. You take like a healthy blend of those aspect cards and a healthy blend of those hero cards and maybe some basic cards. You mix them all together, and then when you drink it, you can't even tell the difference. You don't know if you put spinach in that smoothie or if you put, bee wax in that smoothie in those old mall smoothie shops. You have no idea. It's just, this congealed deliciousness that is, a balance of focusing on both hero and aspect cards. So as a disclaimer, this isn't the only way to categorize decks. This is how I'm trying to do it in my mind for this video series as a useful example. I would love to see your burger salad decks, and I would love to see your burger smoothie decks. I would never drink a burger smoothie, but I would play a burger smoothie deck. There's a lot of combinations and give and take in these categories, but this is how I'm going to categorize them for this video series. So today, we're going to focus on this first column over here. We're going to focus on burger decks. So, what is a burger deck? It's when the aspects are the meat of your sandwich. So in this type of deck, the hero is simply the carrier for the tastier, more fun part of the deck, the aspect cards. Not all hero aspect combinations fit all deck types, so don't be able to expect to take, Hawkeye protection and make those protection cards the focus of your deck, because you're probably going to fall apart. But you can find specific hero combinations that really let you emphasize some combo or something in the aspect pool that can be really, really fun. And we're finally getting to like really exciting aspect cards, and I'm going to go through one of those decks today in this video. So this is commonly observed in combo decks when you're looking at some like 2 or 3 card combo in an aspect. It works really well with self-sufficient heroes where they don't need a lot of support from their aspect to shore up a weakness or to highlight their strength. They can kind of just exist on their own, and anything you get out of the aspect is just gravy, so you can kind of let the hero carry the day until your combo comes through. Again, this works really well, and it's kind of the same thing for well-rounded heroes. Someone like Captain America, yeah, you can build a deck that really focuses on those Captain America cards. Or you could just use those cards to get by until you get to your, your juicy Hawaiian hamburger. And that's what we're going to focus on today, burger decks. So what do? You start by picking a few aspect cards that synergize or a combo that you want to pursue. So something like Dive Bomb and Hone Technique. We talked about this in the Captain Marvel video yesterday. If you use Dive Bomb with Hone Technique out, you hit something for 11 and then everything else for 5. That is a super fun, awesome combo that is super rewarding when it goes off, especially in multi-villain scenarios and minion-heavy scenarios. You're going to love it. It's going to be a delicious, delicious burger. So then you see, okay, I've picked my aspect, right? I know what combo or what like suite within that aspect, if it's defending and take no damage, that I want to highlight. What other cards in this aspect can help me out with this or can strengthen this, right? So I have Dive Bomb and Hone Technique, so I know that's going to also work with melee. That'll give me more targets. I'm getting some pretty expensive cards here, so I probably want to include Power of Aggression and Martial Prowess and stuff like that. So you're really filling out like the flavors of that burger, if you will, with the aspect. And then you say, okay, well, I have this, flavor profile picked out. What kind of bread fits that best, right? Not everything tastes great on a pretzel bun, but pretzel buns are really, really, really good with some sandwiches. So figure out what hero is going to work for you. In this case, we're looking at an aerial deck, so we need a hero that has aerial. Now, we could go with someone like Spectrum that always has aerial, but in this case, I chose to go with Captain Marvel because, first of all, she's in the card art for Dive Bomb, and I am super big on art and stuff like that. But second of all, I thought that it would be good to go through this with the core set heroes. So I chose to do this with Captain Marvel. So we're going to pick a hero, and that's kind of going to be the carrier vehicle for this cool flavor we're going to have in the aggression aspect. And then you got to put on a healthy dose of condiments, and this is going to be in the form of basic cards, and this is going to congeal this beastly sandwich together. So whether that's, your typical mental resources, your Nick Furies, your helicarriers, your resource smoothing, which we'll talk about in a later video, you're going to put those things that kind of congeal this sandwich together and marry this hero to this aspect profile that you're looking for. So let's go through this with this Captain Marvel Dive Bomb deck, and then we'll do a live example with a Counterpunch deck that I think is going to be super fun. So in this Dive Bomb deck, we're focusing all on Dive Bomb and Hone Technique. So those are some really expensive cards, which is one good reason that we chose Captain Marvel. But basically, we're looking for this 11 plus 5 AoE combo. So we're going to put 3 copies of each of those things in our deck because we know we want to get to this, delicious portion of our sandwich. So the other cards we're going to include, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to throw in some Melees, we're going to throw in some Power Regressions because we're getting into a kind of expensive deck that requires resource matching. We want to make sure that when we draw into our combo, we're able to play it to its best extent. And then we're going to say, okay, well, what are some other cards that could fit with this? We could include Pitchback because we're already going aerial, and that's a super efficient card. We could include Fluid Motion because we're looking at including pitchbacks and making sure we play attack events. So that's kind of just a cheaper combat training on the turn that we play our combo. So that's going to highlight our combo more than, just auto-attacking with our hero. And now we've got to do our hero selection. So this is where I went with Captain Marvel. I looked at my deck. I said, this is a really expensive deck. Captain Marvel has Energy Blasts. Those are really good. Now that's going to be not able to be used to play Hone Technique, but you can use it with Melee when you're not triggering your Hone Technique, or you can use it for Dive Bomb, and then you've only got to spend one more resource, which is hopefully a mental resource. So, we've got lots of card draw with Captain Marvel, so once we get up and running and we have our Hone Technique down, we're going to want to be able to draw into it as often as possible. So, Alpha Flight Station, Photonic Blast, Commander Ability, those are going to be really good. And we know we're going to be aerial from Cosmic Flight if we choose Captain Marvel, so we're also going to have access to good support like Crisis Interdiction and some, I wouldn't say good, but reasonable defense with Captain Marvel's helmet. So, we've got some survivability in there. So we've got, the bread of our sandwich, we've got the meat of our sandwich, and now we've got to apply those condiments. So we're going to put some basic cards in there, right? Captain Marvel has money, don't get me wrong, but what's better than money is more money. So Captain Marvel will include those basic resources for this deck. And then I mentioned, resource matching can be really hard in this deck, so I threw in 3 copies of Assess the Situation in this version that I've been running because I want to, do a twofold solution here. I want to make sure I have mental resources to trigger Dive Bomb and Melee when they draw into my hand once I have Hone Technique down. But I also want to draw into those cards faster, and Captain Marvel's really going to accelerate my pass through my deck, but it's going to be even faster with 3 copies of Assess the Situation. And at this point, I was like, whoa, I've almost made a 40-card deck and there aren't allies in it yet. So I threw some allies in. I went ahead and picked some mental allies, right? Ironheart and Brawn. They're going to help shore up that thwarting until we get our combo going and help us draw cards. We took Angela because we don't care how many minions Angela brings out. We're going to Dive Bomb them all dead. So it's going to be totally fine. She basically has no cost. And then we took Valkyrie to help us manage any minions while we're setting up our combo. And also provide us a little bit more energy resources, because even though the bread of our sandwich is Captain Marvel, we are going to have to play some Photonic Blasts and things to draw into our combo. So this was our Captain Marvel burger deck, and I played it against 3 different villains. It went 2-1, and the villain it lost against was Thanos, and he crushed me real bad. I didn't draw into any allies at the beginning of the game, and it made a little bit of a struggle in solo, but it performed really well in multiplayer against Thanos in the rematch, and then we played Sinister Six, and it was just a hoot to, AoE an entire board of villains, basically. So definitely recommend trying this deck out. I will put a link to the, unpublished version in the video description below if you want to check out this Captain Marvel Dive Bomb deck. There's a ton of people playing Dive Bomb on Discord, and they all are much more experienced than me in building aggression decks. And I loved trying out all their decks as I sort of came to the fine-tuned version that I liked. So this is my Captain Marvel Dive Bomb deck. Super fun, super tasty burger deck. All right. So reminder, this is the end of the video. So burger decks, what are they? We're going to start by picking, some combo, some flavor profile within an aspect that we really enjoy. We're going to take that flavor profile and stretch out in that aspect and see what other cards we can include that really highlights that aspect. At that point, we're going to pick what hero, best supports this combo. Is it a hero that has aerial? Is it a hero that draws more cards? It is a hero that has high defense so I can last for a long time to get this combo off. What do I need to make this combo work? And then you're going to apply a healthy dose of those condiments. You're going to put in some mayonnaise, put in some ketchup, put in some mustard, whatever you need from the basic aspect to really bridge these 2 things together and make this delicious burger deck. So We're now going to switch over to my browser and do a live demo of a counterpunch deck. And I've already selected the hero, but that's because I went through this deck building process and built the deck. So I'm cheating a little bit, right? I have a piece of paper down here that tells me what's in the deck, but I played a deck all about counterpunch. So let's get it out here and talk about it. All right, so we've got our Marvel CDB browser page pulled up, and what I want to focus on in this deck build is all about Counterpunch. So Counterpunch is a really cool card from the Marvel Champions core set. After your hero defends against an enemy attack, deal damage to that enemy equal to your hero's ATK. And I really love this card. Obviously, I'm going to want someone with a strong ATK to make use of it, but I'm also going to want them to be able to defend fairly well. And there's a lot of different ways you can go about that. And you might argue at the end of this video series that this is more of a smoothie deck, but when I was building it, I followed the burger deck process. And I said, what if I wanted to be able to counterpunch with a hero that has a strong ATK, but then still use their ATK during the hero phase? So I get someone to 3 attack, maybe 2 attack, I counterpunch with them, and I get to swing at them to push extra damage. So it's kind of a protection deck that's, all about mitigating a little bit, but more about absorbing attacks and dealing damage. So there's some really cool protection aspect cards like Defiance, Hero Interrupt. When a boost card on an enemy attacking you would be turned face up, discard this card instead. So here's a way you can discard the boost card, become the defender, perform a defense. At the end of that defense, which is the end of the attack, you'll be able to play Counterpunch, all without exhausting your character. Other versions of this for maybe multiplayer are Preemptive Strike. So here, when a boost card is turned face up while the villain attacks, cancel all the boost icons, then deal 1 damage to the villain for each boost icon canceled, and at the end, counterpunch the villain to the face, which can be super, super fun. So right away, I've got 9 cards already, and I've got to figure out what other protection cards go along with this. So I'm not actually looking at defending myself as a character. I'm more looking at absorbing and becoming the defender by playing events. So one thing stands out to me right away is with Preemptive Strike, I'm probably going to want to include a way to pay for that so that I can still use other cards during my turn. So for that, I included 2 copies of Nerves of Steel. This is going to help me pay for that Preemptive Strike, which is really, 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 really important. Another thing that can shut this combo down is any kind of stun. So we don't want to be caught getting stunned and then not being able to counterpunch. So we're going to use Nerves of Steel to make sure we're clearing, not Nerves of Steel, oh my gosh, Night Nurse to make sure we're clearing that stun if it does get in our way. Since we're not planning to absorb attacks, I included a couple allies to also help defend myself. So I'm looking at Starhawk, I'm looking at Clea, I'm looking at, I'm looking down at my notes here. It looks like I also had Brother Voodoo to help me go search out those aspect cards that I really want. At this point, I was like, okay, I've got, 15-ish aspect cards. I should figure out what hero really works well with this. And the hero I settled on was She-Hulk, and there were a couple contenders for me about how this could work. I thought about using Hulk, but I've already included a lot of aspect cards that don't have the punchy symbol, and Hulk really likes punchy symbols, and that can set him back a little bit. I also said, well, I'm going to be taking damage, so I want someone who has a high HP pool that can kind of gain an advantage from that. Maybe someone that has a Gamma Slamma, She-Hulk. So we started leaning in her direction right away. I looked at some other heroes that have 3 attack, and Hawkeye wasn't super exciting to do that. I mean, you could in theory do this, but you need to be able to have a high hit point pool to survive things. I looked at Ant-Man for a little bit. Because he could flip down and manage threat that way if this was a solo deck, but I was mainly testing this deck on multiplayer, so I decided to go with She-Hulk. Again, core set bias, trying to make a really fun core set deck. So at this point, I like to look at things like my cost curve, and I can see here I've got 24 cards that cost 2 or less in my deck already, so that is awesome. She-Hulk does not have a ton of cards to spare playing expensive cards, so getting some cheaper cards out right away are really good. I can look at some really cool combos, like if I get, a superhuman strength down, that's going to give me +2 attack. I could then Defiance into a counterpunch and punch for 5 and a stun during the villain phase. And I might even, Preemptive Strike against the first player, deal some damage, counterpunch them, applying my +2 from superhuman strength, and then stun them when they come to me. There's some really, really fun combo play that you can do here. And at this point, I had to figure out what kind of condiments do I need to sort of round out this sandwich. Obviously, She-Hulk needs all the resources she can get. So I went ahead and included my energy, genius, and strength, something that's just pretty much essential to her. Another thing was, since I was taking damage, I wanted to have a way to be able to repair that damage a little bit. So I brought 2 copies of Ready to Rumble. I do want to be able to use the Jennifer Walters 5 Recover. And this is a way that when I flip up to hero form, I'm able to ready so I can get my 3 damage in and my auto damage from my flip, and then make sure that I'm able to always get that damage in whenever I can, in addition to my counter punching. I brought a copy of Nick Fury just to help me accelerate and find those cards better. And I did the same thing, and this is kind of like this is a crutch for me, but I included 3 copies of Assess the Situation because it helps me find those combo pieces faster, which I think is super important for finding your combo pieces. At this point, I'm at 39 cards. I considered a couple other cards. I considered something like an Armored Vest. That could be really strong. I considered Momentum Shift, but I didn't really want to add more events to my deck since I already had 21. And what I ended up doing was including, where is it here? I guess it's 3 copies of, not Sidestep, where is it? Jump Flip. What's the one? Jumpy Flip. Here it is. I included 3 copies of Jump Flip. So I was at 42 cards, and we'll talk about what happens when you go over 40 cards, why you should pare down to 40 or 41, and how I go about doing that later. But I started this deck at 42 cards because I wanted to be able to prevent some of that damage and give myself one more way to defend in case I didn't have a Defiance or a Preemptive Strike in hand, so I could get my defense in and push into my counterpunch. Deck ended up being extraordinarily fun. I played against Rhino in solo, and then I played against Claw in multiplayer, and against Mutagen Formula in multiplayer. The Mutagen Formula game was tight, but luckily the Captain Marvel player playing leadership that was passing me cards carried it through. But the Claw game I performed super well in, even getting exhausted, because usually I would get exhausted and have already done most of the damage or most of the mitigating for my turn, so it was really, that protection high of getting things done in the villain phase. And it just paid itself off. It was a super fun deck. It focused mainly on aspect cards. That being said, there was a lot of combo and interplay with the hero, and you're going to find that through all of these 3 deck classifications. All of them kind of, focus a little bit on each. So in this example, you could Defiance an attack against you, play Counterpunch, so you'd still be standing when it becomes the hero turn, and then you could attack and do 1-2 punch, so you'd get 9 damage in and a Defiance with your cards. And that's a pretty good turn for She-Hulk, if we're being honest. So this is the deck. It was super fun. I will also post this deck in the video description below, so you can check it out. But until next time, I would love to see people go and try to make some burger decks that really focus on some combo or some flavor profile within an aspect, and post them in the comments below so people can try out your favorite burger and maybe tell us what your favorite real-life burger is that pairs with this awesome deck that you built. So until next time, enjoy your sandwiches, enjoy your burgers, enjoy your Impossible Burgers, however you enjoy your sandwiches. I hope that they bring you lots of hero stomping victories. Thanks for tuning in, and have an awesome time building.